Okay, and now of course let me know if code become less visible. I can also of course adjust the font size. And let's see if there are more questions. Please, if you have questions for me, something that I should answer, then tag me. So write @Erichto, because then the message is more visible for me. I understand that font is more blurry, but I guess it is readable. Okay, let's move on. I don't see questions about the problem, so let's move to compiling. And also, when we are at compiling, I can show you my flags. Someone asked, what's the point of all the code after ++ answer? The goal was to remove a letter, and it's actually a good question, because I guess it was a mistake to do it, because now I removed, if I let's say removed the 0th letter and I moved to the first letter, so after that I actually skipped one, and I guess we'll be able to create a test against that. So actually I shouldn't have removed a letter. Someone again asked, can you lower the video quality? I prefer not to, so I'm sorry about that. You will be able to watch the YouTube video later, and as I said, eventually Twitch will allow me to stream with quality adjustments for viewers, but it's not possible now. And Jeff again asked, it seems to me like you're removing rows, but you can only remove columns, right? I can check that. I hope I'm removing columns. I will move to that in a moment. Now let me tell you about my flags, what I strongly recommend. So this second row of flags is very important because it contains many sanitizers. Things that allow you to catch errors that otherwise would just give you some random segmentation fault, or maybe just your code would be undefined behavior. So you can copy it from chat or here from video, and it checks various, I'm not sure if it checks overflows, but there's a flag for that. Yeah, actually it does checks runtime overflows. It checks some amount of boundaries, some maybe wall is very useful because it checks, I think, not returning anything from a function and things like that. And one more thing is that I use Genie, Genie ID, and Genie allows me to do multiple key bindings. So with F9, I've just hit F9, I have that second line of flags, and with F8, what I'm hitting now, I'm running a different set of flags with O2 optimization flag, and it's useful because with sanitizers your code gets much slower. So if you want to check your code, the speed of your program, for example run it on a max test, it's stupid to do it with optimization flags, because you will get runtimes minutes instead of seconds. So I actually have two buttons, and when I want to check the speed, I just hit F8 instead of F9. New questions. People suggest YouTube. When well, tomorrow I will stream again, and then I can check YouTube. Someone asked about YouTube link. What I meant is that I will upload the recording later to YouTube. The contest like IOI allow to change the flags. Yes, you can configure your IDE however you want, but you must do it at the beginning of a competition. So you must spend like 2 minutes on it at the beginning. Okay, so let's copy the samples and move to fixing an issue with my program, because I think it doesn't work, as someone pointed out. It works on first 2 samples. If someone doesn't know, I'm using Ubuntu, and terminal that you see now is called Guake. And you see that the answer for the last sample is incorrect. And the issue is the following. When I have, let's say, what I have, let's say that I have the input BB and AA. So I go over the first column and I remove the first B and the first A. What I'm left with is B and A. And the issue now is that here in this line, all the time I increase call by 1. So I first had call equal to 0. I checked the first column, but then I removed it. I moved to BA, but call was increased to 1. So actually one fix is to here decrease call by 1. And the other fix will be to just not remove what I removed. It works now correctly, but not for the second sample. I don't know the issue, so I can just, because I actually remove letters, I can just print what I get after each removal. So here I can do so now I should get the strings after each removal, and let's see if the code does what I want it to do. So we remove the first column, and then we remove the third column, the one with as R as D, and then we don't remove, we remove the last column. I think it does what I wanted it to do. Okay, so the thing is that it isn't enough to check one column, and the second sample shows that, because at the moment we have this, the strings are already lexicographically sorted. It was a mistake to check the second column, so the column with letters E, E, T, E, because the first column made it sorted already. So here the second string is already for sure smaller than the third string, and the third string is for sure smaller than the fourth string. So we must somehow consider that. People ask about 420p. I will not change to that quality because it will lower the code visibility too much. Sorry for that. Okay, so right now we want to also somehow consider previous strings. So one idea of mine is to maybe check whether one string is smaller than the next. But the issue with that, maybe an issue with that, is that if I have strings ABC and ABD, ABC and ABA, then comparing it for the 0th column will say that the first string is greater than the next string, so I should remove a letter. What I should do is to check whether strings are sorted up to some point. So Here, when we check is sorted, I think what we should do is to check whether strings are sorted up to this point. Let me check the substring command. It's substring. Okay. So actually what I want to do is to check if one string up to column call, so this should include the first letters up to column, is greater than the next one. Let's see if it works now. It seems to work. We can remove the printing part. And we can submit our first problem. Someone again asks about the availability of a video later. So let me answer in chat. I will post the recording later on YouTube. And it's accepted. And we can move to the next problem, unless you have some questions or maybe suggestions. Maybe you think I should stop more often or stop less often. And if not, we move to the next problem, and I post a link on chat again. It's problem B from the same round. Someone asked, can I please smile? Yes, I can, but I guess I don't do it by default. While you read a problem, I will also say something to people that are maybe not familiar with my Codeforces post. So the goal of this stream is, I guess, to teach people a bit more about competitive programming. I think while editorials show a solution, not necessarily you can see what is the possible thought process, what is the possible debugging. I think the first problem was a good example because I didn't do it correctly immediately. I didn't know a problem, I didn't know a solution. Like, it turned out to be easy, but also I made a mistake. And you can see how I deal with errors, how I debug. So I hope everybody should learn something. And for people not familiar with competitive programming at all, I can say that it's about simple or not simple math-related problems, sometimes not related to maths, when you have to write a program that is fast enough and computes something. For example, maybe it finds the second biggest number in an array of numbers, or maybe it, given a graph, so given a map, like for GPS, it finds the shortest distance between 2 points on the map. And competitive programming is like a sport or a hobby that is who does it faster. So chat, please speak in English. Someone says you're from Poland, speak Polish. No, the language here is English. Okay, I will check PM on Codeforces later. Is this my first stream? Yes, it is my very first stream. Okay, so let's move to a problem. We are given scores in some table tennis match, and we are given a sequence of who scored each point, and there are some values S and T that says how many points you have to win a set and how many sets you have to win a match. So let's analyze the first sample to make sure we understand everything correctly, because if the statement isn't very simple, it's easy to understand it wrong. So here I understand this input as they win alternatively. So first they're called Petya and Gena, and so here let's say Petya wins, then Gena, Petya, Gena, and so on. And if we play, so if every set is just a 1 point win, then they win alternatively. So the total score in the match here will be 3 sets for player 1 and 2 for player 2. And the other options is that a set is to 3 points, so then what is shown is the whole set. Before I start implementing a problem, maybe I will move everything from the first problem to a different directory, so I could share it later. And starting from now, I'll just write in new directories. Okay, so you can, I remember a much simpler problem that is maybe a puzzle. So I was told this problem by Mateusz Radecki, that I guess it's a problem you can tell, I don't know, to your friends when you explain what could be a trick in competitive programming. So a problem was given a set, like given a sequence of points in a tennis match, for example 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, and so on, and given rules of tennis, determine who won the whole match. And of course you can implement the simulation. Like tennis is played like to, I don't know, you get 15, 30, 40, and then you win a set. So it's like to 4 points, but also if there is a tie, you must get, I think, 2 points advantage, and so on, and you have to score some number of sets to win a game, and then to win a whole match. And you can write the whole simulation and it will work. But what is a trick here is to understand, to notice that a winner is whoever won the last point. So given a sequence of 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and so on, you just have to print the last number in the input. What is my system and IDE? I use Ubuntu and I use Genie. You can see name here, unless my face covers it. Yeah, my face exactly covers name Genie. Okay. Let's move to solving this problem. I guess what I told you won't be useful in this problem, but it's just a story you can tell somebody if he asks you what a trick could be, what is so interesting here. Okay, so a segment of numbers in the input that represents some set isn't important. What is important is only the last number there. So this is one observation. What we can do here, for sure we can iterate over all possible pairs of S and T, and it should be too slow, I guess, but we can think about the complexity. After reading the input, of course, we can iterate for S from 1 to N, and then for T from 1 to N. And so the complexity is at least n squared, but for sure we don't need so many, like big S and T don't make sense. Because for sure what must be true is that S times T can't exceed N. And because if each set, so what was the definitions? Is the number of points in a set. So if each set consists of at least T points, and you need S sets, then the whole match lasts at least S times T points. So for sure one optimization is to write this here. So the complexity is already decreased. And right now, like if I just do, I don't know, plus complexity here, I think the complexity is of order of n log n, and there is some explanation for that. Let's check. If n is equal to 100,000, let's print the number complexity after the whole loop, just to check if we are right. And it's around n times log n, indeed. It's around 1 million. Why is that? Basically, the important lemma you should know is the sum of the number of divisors of number from 1 to n is n log n. So it's, I think, the most useful, the most common usage of that is in CIF for prime numbers, because if you write something like this, let's call it P, and here you iterate over multiplies of P, the complexity of this CIF is n log n. And the explanation for that is that basically we do n operations for number 1. So here in this loop for s equal to 1, then we do n divided by 2 operations for the next s, n divided by 3, n divided by 4, and so on. And this sums up to n log n, because you can see that the first element is n, then the next two elements are, the sum of them is at most n, it's actually a bit less than that. Then the next 4 elements, n divided by 4, 5, 6, 7, they sum up to n, or a bit less, the next 8 elements the same, and so on. So you can create log groups, each summing up to n. So this is a very important property. So possibly we must use it in this problem, assuming we can now quickly do something here, because we can't just linearly consider S and T. But well, we can just to have a brute force to then compare our answer. So let's read the input. And as previously, I recommend using vectors. And we can just check every possible S and T and store them in some vector of pairs, and then print them as set in the input. I don't remember lines to make cout faster and sin. If somebody in the chat can give me the lines like, I think, base sync with your false, and there was also something like synty null. I don't know if it's necessary. Because without some special lines, you can't use syn and cout. I actually use print and scanf, as you can see here, when I don't think. But I think they are not that much readable for the audience, for people not familiar with them. So let's use syn and cout. Very important thing, don't use ENDL, instead use \n, because ENDL flashes the output what is slower. So don't do that. You will get time limit exceeded, at least in some problems, at least in some platforms. Okay, here we want to consider if this S and T is a good pair. So we can just write a simulation. Let A and B count the scores of each player, while none of them is equal to T. If this number is 1, then increase A, otherwise increase B. If A is equal to T, then the first player won one set, otherwise the second player. We must of course create those numbers. So for sure there are here some issues with out of boundaries errors, because here we consider every next element until one player gets T points, but possibly we'll run out of input, and then we will get out of boundary error. So like one thing I forgot is to increase next index here, but also I want to do next index smaller than n. So here, if next index gets to n and neither A or B are equal to T, I don't want to increase sets 1. Actually, if neither, then I want to set some flag to false. Let's say that it's okay, checks if everything was okay in the process. Okay, and after we considered the whole thing, oh, okay, what we also want to do is we want to stop when max of sets1 is equal to s. You can notice that this line and this line are very similar because they represent a similar thing. And here, if max of sets A and sets B is still smaller than s, then we set is okay to be false. And maybe one more thing when we want to set flag to false is when next index isn't equal to n. So it's possible when we run out of sets. So here we maybe break from a while loop because we already got s sets, and then here next index will not be equal to n. And now if is awk, we have a good pair. Okay, thank you chat. Somebody gave me a line that I forgot. And now, of course, we check the samples. A very important thing that many strong people still do is to not save input file to not save the sample test to an input file, what is stupid, because then you have to like scroll the terminal and copy the same things again. So just do it once and have it as a file. So input 1, 2, and 3. Let's take input 4 later and let's see what is printed. So far it's okay. And yeah, it's okay. Right now, I guess that my program is too slow. I would say that the complexity is n squared times log n, but maybe it amortizes a bit less. And we can either, at this moment in a contest, I would either try to take a risk and submit, especially if it's a contest with immediate feedback, if you immediately know if your solution gets accepted. It isn't a good idea in Codeforces because possibly pretests will not catch that, and that you will get hacked or wrong answer on systests. So it's better to understand your complexity, especially on Codeforces. What we know about complexity is that here we get n log n times, and the complexity of the main logic is limited by O of n. So we know that the whole thing is limited for sure, but by n squared log n. Possibly it's smaller because maybe it amortizes, maybe this while loop breaks more often. My guess is that it doesn't change the complexity and it will be still n squared log n, and we must make it a bit faster. So maybe the question for you is whether you want me to just now try to make it faster, or maybe you want to check it on some max test, like create some generator or tests. So write your vote in chat. So Jeff wrote, I don't think there's any way n squared can work. It's true, of course, that n squared can't work for n up to 100,000. What I meant is that the complexity n square log n only shows some limit. For example, these two loops with s and t, you can also say that the first one, like t can get up to n values, s can get up to n values. So it's actually correct to say that these two loops have complexity n squared. It's correct to say that. O of something means complexity of this magnitude or smaller. But sometimes you can prove better complexity. And this was a case, like similar to SIF of prime numbers. And here it turns out that it's analogous. But here I think it's not faster than n squared. Someone asks, do you know the solution by now, or are you still thinking? I want to know how much time it takes you for you to get there. I don't know a solution. I have a very good idea. I'm not sure if it's faster than n squared. I will tell it in a moment. Based on, like, you can guess by standings how much it takes people to, like, I don't know, red people to get to come up with a solution for a problem like this. So here we can just open standings for this contest, and we can see that usually people solved A in a few minutes and then B like 20 minutes later. So likely it takes people at least a few minutes to come up with a solution. Okay, so what the majority says, I see more make it faster. Okay, so we don't create a max test. And what is my idea? My idea is that we, similarly to some dynamic programming, we without actually writing smart dynamic programming, we compute the same thing many times, because we consider various s and t pairs, and sometimes with the same value of t, we start from the same point. So some optimization is to, I think in this moment, given t, so something that describes how many points you need to win a set, if you only once consider everything till the end, so for example, with, let's say, s equal to 2, t equal to 3, if you know that first segment is from 0 to, I don't know, 4, second segment from 5 to 7, and so on, then if you later consider, sorry, s equal to 3, then the same thing happens. So actually you will get exactly the same thing, 0, 4, 5, 7. The only difference is that you will break at different point. So my first idea, something that I thought about minutes ago, is that we can do some memoization. So maybe do some map from state to something like that. And we've given per next index and t to remember something. But actually, right now I think that s isn't necessary at all. We should just iterate over t, simulate everything, and see if we finish exactly at the end of a match. Because if with t equal to 3, we simulate a match and we see that the last point was the end of some set, and thanks to this, one player won with some number of sets, then we don't actually need to iterate over this value. And what it shows is another important thing, is that maybe you shouldn't implement the first thing that comes to your mind. So first I said that let's write something, let's check all the pairs s and t, but actually I didn't see a solution with that. I understand that that solution is n squared. So it's, I think, always useful in IOI competition, where you get partial score, and it's good to have some brute force to then maybe test with your main solution if it's wrong. But here in Codeforces, for example, or other short contests, I would recommend first think a lot to then implement faster. Okay, I don't want this. Let's copy our program to the next one, and here let's do it faster. So I think we should just iterate over t. And because I iterate over something, let's also remember to sort gather at the end, because maybe it will be necessary. Because now I'm not sure in what order I put pairs. Previously I just iterated over s and t. Here I will do something maybe more random. And here let's just have the same thing, but without s. So we don't want to use s. And of course it will be a bit more tricky, but we want to finish exactly with the last point. So let's, for example, let's for a moment not know s. We don't know s. So let's remove this. And now we want s to be something taken from the last point. So here, if a is equal to t, and if next index is equal to n minus 1, so it's the last game, then we want to set, let's say, s to a, to sets a. This is first idea, and let's do the same thing here. Actually, we also want to check if sets a at this moment is bigger than sets b. So I think it will be more elegant to just here do, instead of this, to here do if next index is equal to n, or, well, we check it here, and we don't need this. So one idea is to just write s is equal to max of sets a and sets b. And I think it's wrong. Why? Because maybe sets looked like this. Maybe it was score 4 to 2. And after that, with the last point, the second player got a set. It's invalid. It's impossible, because we say that the last point allowed him to reach some number of sets. So it's better to here write if next index is equal to n, so it's the end, and maybe after increasing, and sets a is bigger than sets b, then we can safely set s to sets a. The same thing here. And here, like, we first set s to minus 1, and here we set s to some value only if we found out that the last point was scored as it was meant to be. So here we can write if s is equal to minus 1, then it's okay, set to false. What is wrong? I think I didn't close some bracket. Okay, I have one too many brackets because previously I had also a for loop for s. Let's see answers. I think they didn't change. Now the question is, of course, about complexity. Okay, Sxida says he must go. Okay, bye, and you can of course watch me later on YouTube. EA555 says, maybe you also need to check that players do not have equal sets with given t. I think now the issue is resolved. And the question is, of course, about the complexity. So now we have complexity limited for sure by O of n squared. Because we iterate over t from 1 to n, and then we simulate something, and that simulation is O of n. We must do it faster. And it's actually a standard thing to do from here. And once you solve many problems, you should see this, let's say, trick. When we try to find the next set, we don't need to process points one by one. What we are looking for is to find what is the next moment when some player will have some number of points. So you can, one idea is you can binary search that moment, assuming you can tell what is the number of points scored at some interval. And the other idea is, for example, let's say it's the very beginning of the input sequence. If t is equal to 5, what you're looking for is the 5th occurrence of some number, 1 or 2 in the input. If some part of input is already processed, something was processed, and now we have a new set, then we want to find the tth number starting from this point. So if, let's say, there were already, I don't know, 5 times 2 and 7 times 1, and t is equal to, say, 3, then we are looking for a moment when there was either 8 numbers 2 or 10 numbers 1. Because at this moment, starting from the beginning, because at this moment we know that somebody scored 3 points in this set. Remember Go Greedy. Hi, Mateusz. Okay, so why am I saying that at all? I want to avoid binary search to get a bit better complexity, because with this approach we can just remember at the very beginning where the 10th one was and where the 8th 2 was, and we can in constant time access that point. So we must do some pre-processing that will allow us to tell it, to check that. Again, I recommend vectors instead of arrays. And actually, what we need to do, let's say that we create 2 arrays, one for numbers 1, one for numbers 2, and we want to use them for what we are talking about now. It's stupid to create 2 arrays for basically the same thing, so let's just make it 2-dimensional. Let's call it pre-processing. This is array 2 times n. Maybe let's do it n plus 1. Okay, in count. So this will store counts of every element, and now for every new number, now it's 0 or 1, I want to increase count of this number by 1, and to write that where the first times this number of occurrences happened was this index. So I write so x is equal to 0 or 1, and now count of x is something, and here we need index. By default here the value vectors are filled with zeros. Let's fill them with -1s to just see easily if something was not set. So apparently this value doesn't exist. Anyone else here interviewing? So I guess you don't do competitive programming and you just want to learn for interview for some company. Okay, going back here. So we will change logic a lot here because he's here, instead of now iterating over every point, we want to do something smarter. As I said with these comments, I showed we need the number of ones and the number of twos up to some moment. So we also have to preprocess what is the prefix sum. So actually let's change this confusing name to where, because this is what it stores. And instead of just temporary count, here let's do prefix sum. This time initialized with zeros. Okay, maybe okay, let's leave it like here. So just a standard thing, we also count prefix sums. So we don't need count anymore. Instead, we just use prefix sum at this point. Prefix sum of x and y. And if you find terms like this confusing, then you can also just for simplicity you can just create a temporary variable. Let's say count equal to prefix sum x1, and then you can put count here, just to make it easier to read. So I hope we correctly computed prefix sums, and now we can actually solve the problem fast. Regarding the complexity now, we will use the first lemma I was talking about n log n amortized time, because with every time linear simulation we have n squared, but now for t equal to, let's say, 4, below that we'll only do at most n divided by 4 jumps, and so on. So again, we get for t equal to 1, we will get O of n operations, but later for t equal to 10, we will get O of n divided by 10 operations. So the total complexity will be n log n, just as previous. And here we need something more complicated. Let's first find counts of elements up to this point. So if next index is at this point, I want to find prefix sums from the previous index. Okay, and of course I don't want to do it if next index is equal to 0, because then I will get out of boundary. So let's just here check if next index is different than 0. And then otherwise count is by default in C++ equal to 0, 0. So here, just in case, it's equivalent to array of size 2. And let's take a look at this comment. By the way, this is usually what I would write on paper. It's useful to write things like this. And looking at this, I can actually implement the logic. Because here, what I want is place where 0th element, so the player 0 has prefix sum equal to count of 0 plus t, or first player has count of 1 plus t. So let's say jump 2 is minimum because it's the first place of where of 0 count of 0 plus t, and where of 1 of count of 1 plus t. Okay, what are the possible issues? One thing is that we initialize that to -1. So here, if there is -1 somewhere, then this minimum will find -1, where actually it should find, like, first of all, the actual value. So here, let's set it to infinity. Int max is just the maximum possible value of integer in C++. And now it makes more sense because it represents that the next place, the next place where there's some required prefix sum is somewhere at the end. So this was one issue. The second issue that is, I guess, harder to notice is that possibly count of 0 might be up to n. Also t can be up to n. So this sum can be up to 2n. So I think we need to change here n to 2 times n. And if you don't notice here at this moment, then you will just get some error while you run samples, I hope. But also this shows why you should avoid arrays, because if you just here wrote an array of size like this, you wouldn't notice it on samples, and either you would get runtime on pretests, or maybe even worse, you would pass pretests but then fail on some system test. So you will get runtime error more often if you use arrays. This is a lesson. Okay, jump to here, and if jump 2 is more than n, then it's okay, because then we actually can jump somewhere. Next index will be jump 2 plus 1. We also want to know whether to increase sets won by first or second player. So if let's say that here we would create jump A equal to this value. Jump B will be the second value. And jump 2 is minimum of those. And what we do here, if jump 2 is equal to jump A, so apparently the first number was smaller, we can also add here an assert. It will not hurt if we know that it should be true. Jump A and jump 2 should be different, because it's theoretically, well, it should be impossible that two players, we found out that two players should won a set at the same moment. Actually, we can also add one more assert. So here is not only we increase sets won by A, but also we can write asserts in of jump 1 is equal to 1, because the first player should win this. You don't have to write asserts, you don't have to use them, but they can help you. They can help you catch more mistakes. If something doesn't work, but like if our logic is correct, it should always be true. The issue is that if your implementation has a bug, then asserts will help you find it out sooner, because you will know, not necessarily later I print answers wrong, I know that I computed prefix sums wrong because some assert failed. Also, if you want to put more asserts, maybe here you could theoretically, for example, assert that prefix sum of 0, 1 plus prefix sum of 1i should be equal to I plus 1. It should be true, because like in prefix of size 5, if there are 4 ones, there must be exactly 1, 2. I wouldn't write it in a contest, because why would I? But it just shows you what you can do if you want to check more things, if you want to be more sure. I think I would put more asserts in a long contest, even, for example, IOI. Okay, else we can also put some assert here, but I don't care. Next index, okay, we put next index here. This logic we can remove. Any questions right now? Somebody asks, how do we know assert has failed? In C++, one moment, let's remove it for a moment. In C++, you will get something like, so let's put assert.n is equal to 3. So if you, if you write n equal to 4, for example, here, then it says in line number 10, this assert failed. And it says you exactly what assert failed. But if I put 3, nothing happens. While in different segmentation fault, something different would happen. Okay, so you know exactly what assert failed. And we must finish some logic here. If max of a and b is smaller than t, we don't need that. We don't need that because we don't anymore count a and b, but we will need something. So here this one stays. We need to for sure initialize s. How to do it? We can do it similarly to the previous version here. If next index is equal to n, or let's say and sets a bigger than sets b, s is sets a. And same here. If next index equal to n and sets b is larger than sets a. Okay, I hope we're finished. So let's run on samples. It gets into infinite loop, unfortunately. Okay, why is that? Here we have, just to make sure that we are in infinite loop here, we can write something like this. Now I expect many occurrences of that. Yeah, it happens. Actually, here you don't see that there are new lines over and over, so maybe it's better to write it like this, because now you see something like this. Okay, so likely we don't break from this while loop while we should. when we should break. We should break, for example, here, if jump2 is smaller than n, we do something, but what otherwise? Well, otherwise, we should break. We could also do is awk equal to false here, but I think it's unnecessary, because anyway, next index will not be equal to n. It will be still smaller than n. Now I think the answer is correct, and we can submit. During an actual contest, I strongly recommend not refreshing this page and instead just opening a next problem, but we are not in a hurry here. And it's accepted, fortunately. And the complexity was n-log-n, as I explained. What you can do after a contest, just to learn new things, is you can always check someone that maybe solved a problem quite fast. For example, here we see Petr solved it in 50 minutes, so maybe he used a different approach. It's in Java, but it shouldn't be an issue. It's similar to C++. And we see that he computes prefix sums, and also, if I'm not mistaken, he computes the exact same thing. P0 and P1, I guess, is my where array, and here he iterates over k, and I guess makes those jumps using P0 and P1. So it's actually the same solution. So we didn't gain much by seeing that code. Sorry, it wasn't Petr, it was Chocoladina. Okay, but it was also in Java. Someone asks, what are you making? Okay, I can repeat, I guess, some description. I stream competitive programming, so I'm not making some software. I'm just solving some puzzles, algorithmic puzzles, things that you do maybe applying for a job during an interview in some big with some big companies, or in high school you get IOI, International Olympiad in Informatics. You also have competitions like Google Code Jam. Okay, and now we'll move to the next problem. Where am I from? I'm from Poland, Warsaw. We can move to the next problem. So you're kind of solving puzzles faster than everyone else. Faster than many people, but not faster than everyone else. We can either move to problem C. I think it's still possible because people didn't take that much time to solve it. Or we can, well, actually we can stay here, I guess. But we will not move to an even harder problem because it would take me too much time to just solve it. Now I can also say that in some competitions, do I live in Poland? Yes, I live in Poland. I'm pasting link to a problem. In some competitions, it's very important to choose problems well. So maybe you want to skip some problems. It isn't the case in Codeforces likely, because problems are sorted by difficulty. So it isn't that stupid to just solve them in the order they are provided. But for example, in ICPC or in IOI, it's good to check some statements and maybe skip some problems because it looks hard, or or maybe it's a topic you don't like. And here, for example, at the first moment I was scared that the input contains graph, and I'm not strong in graphs, so possibly it would take me much time to solve C. But the fact that these numbers are up to 1 billion says that these aren't graphs. So likely it's an interval. And here we have some range, so we have some sequence in the input maybe and some queries on ranges. At what time will the stream end? I think in around 2 hours. Someone is Jon Nosek. I'm going to Poland next week with school to Krakow. Okay, good luck. Are you from Poland? So now, like 2 minutes to read the problem. And, as was said in Codeforces, after the stream I will post, I will upload video to YouTube, and I will upload my codes from the stream somewhere, I don't know, to Dropbox. Okay. From Sweden, and you're moving to high school or university in Krakow? Nosek? A bit more time to read the statement for you. Lazard says, is there a way I could contact you privately? If you have an account on Codeforces, you can write me there. I think it's the best way. If you don't, create an account there and write to me. Where is it easier to win the school Olympiad? In Poland, Russia, or USA? In informatics, I think we should take a look at IOI results and see what is the strongest person in every country. So I think that in this year it's easiest in Poland, because I think Benku from USA won an Olympiad, and I guess that someone from Russia was was close to the top. Hi from USA. Hi, Vitamin. Okay, let's move to solving a problem. So here I guess it will be very important to find a good representation of the input. If we are given some intervals, we can draw it on a line, so just a line with some intervals. Sometimes it's better to draw them as points on the plane, because if you are given a sequence of pairs, often you want to represent them as pairs, because maybe then it will be visible what we should do. One thing I don't understand is whether k should be up to 1 billion. I mean, whether it makes sense for k to be greater than n. What I understand is that we are given a sequence of n intervals, And we also have some people that can cover those intervals. And for every person, you know in what interval he can take smaller intervals, and what is the maximum possible number of intervals he can, let's say, kill. Let's say an interval is killed. Sometimes you also call it eaten, that someone eats, let's say, interval. So the limit for the number of killed intervals for this person. I think k greater than n is the same as equal to n. I guess you can tell a lot about skipping problems at Google CodeGen Finals. Yeah, I guess. The tourist. So I can talk about it after solving this problem. Romania had just one contestant to IOI. Some countries had many more contestants. What's the reason? I think that Romania had the full squad. 4 people, I think. Maybe they aren't listed at the top. Maybe you just saw leaderboard with medals. I don't know. I would guess that Romania had one more than one medal. Okay, so here, if I choose to stream more frequently in the future, then I guess I will buy a graphical tablet. Now I think I will use Paint if I have one. Yeah. Because here some drawings will be important. As I said, it's important in this problem, this is my intuition, to represent the intervals well. Some first ideas are that maybe we should do something greedily. So find a person with smallest allowed interval and for him choose some intervals to kill. I think it's stupid because maybe we'll choose wrong intervals. I don't see an intuitive way to prove that, and also I think it looks stupid, so this is my intuition. Of course, after solving more problems, you have better and better intuition. What else? We can of course do matching, but it will be too slow, because possibly we have 10 to the power 10 edges in this graph, because we have a bipartite graph with people and with intervals to kill. So one possible representation is that we have, okay, this wasn't good. We have some intervals of people, each with some number, let's say 2, 3, I don't know, 2. And we have some smaller intervals to kill. And so this is what you could draw and think about this drawing. And looking at this, my only idea is to do dynamic programming, I think, sorting everything from left to right, and then maybe iterating over the right end of some interval, and I don't know, as dimension storing the number of killed intervals, something like that. So those are ideas, but I think none of them would work if you sit with them for a long time. Constraints in this problem are too big, because of course some dynamic programming would work, but likely you would have to do some complicated and square, and also then optimize it for with some, I don't know, convex hull trick or something to n-log n. But usually it's impossible to do if you should find the number of find some matching or the number of killed intervals. Usually those dynamic programmings make sense if you optimize some value, for example, you want to get the biggest possible total score, something like that, split the input into consecutive segments. That being said, also here maybe the following lemma is true. Maybe for red small intervals, we want to split them into, I don't know, segments. And we want to say that each person will get some segment of small intervals. The issue with that idea is that possibly small intervals intersect with each other. They aren't necessarily next to each other. So I think it isn't a good way. It isn't a good approach. And as I told you, sometimes it's good to represent things as points. So this is my advice if you see pairs of integers in the input and those don't denote edges in a graph. Because I guess edges in a graph don't make sense to represent as points. So let's say we have coordinates and we mark points. So now each person is a point. Let's say that here we have A, here we have B. No. And so A is smaller than B, so all the time we will be in the upper part, but it shouldn't matter much. And now each person is a point described by that pair of numbers A and B. And of course each of those points has some number of possible killed intervals, and each interval to kill. So actually these pairs were C and D from the input, and now each interval to kill is a red point, and the condition from the input we should somehow draw in this graph. How to draw it? We know that C must be smaller than A, smaller than B, smaller than D. Let's think what it means. So here we have some C and D, and here we have some A and B. So C must be smaller than A, so the first coordinate of black point must be smaller, so to the left. So now this black point should be allowed to eat the red point, and also D must be bigger than B, so indeed it must be higher. So what we understood is that this black point can eat everything in this area. And now we have some completely different representation from the one in the statement. Now we are given a set of black and red points, each black with some number, and we want to pair them. So for each red point to choose some black point, and those black points have some limitations. How many red points can be eaten? Now, given points with this version, we should for sure think about some sweep line. We should sort those points, maybe from left, maybe from right, and do something. And after sorting, often then greedy algorithms work. Since for each red point we want to find one black point, maybe my idea is to store black point in some structure, and then for every red point do something. Maybe the other way around makes sense too. So I will sweep in this direction. I hope that my face doesn't cover the drawing, and yeah, it doesn't. So just for me, I will forbid for myself using this part of the drawing. Okay, so we sweep from left to right, and what we do? When we encounter black point, we should put it in a structure. We can't pair it immediately with some red point that was further to the left, because we know that black point must be on the left, or the same x, from the red point. So now we have, let's say in some structure, black points from the left, and now we encounter red point. And we should pair it with some black point. And the question is, in which black point we should pair it. And some possible things are the one with maybe biggest allowed number of eaten red points, because that one can eat more. But actually it doesn't make sense, because what is actually important is those black points where they are. Because we still have the limitation that black point must be above red point. So if we have some black points on the left, maybe a few of them already, and we get red point, then we can pair it only with black points that are higher than that. And so to pair it with one of them. So always black point that is higher is more useful in the future, because it's possible to pair it with more possible red points. So from this we get that at this moment we can do a greedy choice. With red point we pair the lowest possible black point. And why doesn't it matter to check to sort something by the number of occurrences? I mean the number of allowed eaten red points that is given in the input. Because actually, if there is a black point and it can eat 10 red points, you can also represent it as 10 black points in the same point. You can like multiply it and say these are 10 completely different people. So for a moment we can solve a problem where the input doesn't provide those k values that are limitations for the number of eaten points, and it will be the same thing. So the only so one idea was to just multiply those black points. The issue is, of course, we can't, because the complexity would be too big. We will get 10 power 10 points, but we can just store those counters, and once you erase black point to 0, decrease to 0, you remove it from the structure. Do you have some questions about, like, I don't know, proof of solution, or can we move to the implementation? Hi from Dorm Żwirek. Hello. It would be better to swap the two windows. Maybe it's a good idea for the future, but it isn't necessary now. Are you saying that we can completely ignore k? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying so for every red point you had already some black points on the left. Now you pair red point with lowest possible black point, and that black point has some k value, maybe for example initially equal to 5. You decrease it by 1 because you say for sure he will eat this red point, and now the counter is 4, and then there will be more red points on the right, and once counter of some point, some black point, decreases to 0, you remove it. You can't no longer pair it with some red points. Intelligent Dragon asks about some tips for Codeforces. Let's leave it for after a problem. And now let's move to the implementation. Okay, for a moment I will have the statement on the left just to read the input. Later I will move the drawing to the left because it's more useful. So new directory. If someone wonders why I don't write return 0 at the end, it's because you don't have to. It doesn't matter. It's 0 is returned automatically at the end. Okay, we read the input. There's n. There are first red points, so let's call them for a moment red. And again, I started using scanf. And then we read the number of black points. And here we also have counters, so it's more complicated structure. So we have per for coordinates and int for that k value. So those are black. Okay, the input is here. We can copy samples and then we can move to the solution. And now we can move a drawing to the left because it's more useful now than the statement. We want to sort everything from the left. For that, it's useful to have everything stored in one vector of pairs. So let's here create pair of int events, and let's put everything here. It will be a bit hard to always use first, second, because it doesn't mean much for you. Like when you implement a short solution, of course, for a moment you can remember what those things mean. So right now I remember that first dot second meant y coordinate, the second coordinate. But it's harder to read and understand. So let's create a struct for point. So it's something like a, I don't know, maybe in some languages it's a tuple or just array of size 3. You can also use it maybe. And here we need x, y, and k. Then, so we just create a vector of those. And for every red point, we insert per first, per second, 0. So let's say that, or maybe -1. -1 will mean that something is red. So let's also create a function, return k is equal to -1. So here we create something with, we create a point with x equal to per first, y equal to per second, and k equal to -1. And for that more complicated thing, we inserted everything what we read. And of course, instead of reading everything here, you could just read everything here to events, but it doesn't matter much. Here we must sort events. and this should give compilation error because you can't sort structs without comparator function. So in C++, you do it like this. So this is, let's say, our initial comparator, but it must be fixed. So the thing is that possibly we care about the order for points with the same x coordinate, because let's at this very drawing, for this point, this red point, we want to allow it to be eaten by black point here. Let's say that those have the same x coordinate. So when we go from left to right, we should first insert black points to then, when red point appears later, to be able to be eaten. Or maybe we should sort by y coordinate in, I guess, from high to bottom manner. I think both options are possible. I will do an if with type. So if x is equal to the x, return not is red. So this means black first. Okay. We sorted it. And now what we need? We need to iterate. So this is iteration over those events, and we must do the actual logic. I see some questions, general questions. I will answer them later. So for now, only questions related to a problem, please. And between problems, we can talk about general tips and stuff. Okay, so for sure we must do something different if event is black and if point is black and if it's red. So let's first do, okay, if it's red then something, otherwise here it's black something. Okay, black should be easier because we just want to put it in some structure. What that structure should be able to do? It should be able to put some value at some point, at some level, and also later we need lower bound on that, because for red point we need to find the smallest black point above that. In C++, set will be perfect for that. I got an error in Twitch. Can you tell me if you see me now and if you hear me now? Because I have Twitch open in my laptop and it said Twitch machine got disconnected. Okay, that should be okay. Okay, set will be perfect for that. What, maybe set of pairs will be enough. Let's call it, I don't know, insert, or just, I don't know, A. I don't see a good name for that. So A will be inserted black points. So those are black points on the left. For sure, the first coordinate should be y now. So maybe it's enough to just do a insert event dot y, and the second value maybe would be event dot k, that counter, because it will be needed. If I remember correctly, in a problem we not only have to print yes or no, we must print an actual matching. So we need index. We need index of that black point. So apparently here we also need ID, and let's it will be a bit harder. Okay, when we put black points into the whole events vector, so here let's also put y plus 1. Plus 1 because we want to get from 1 to some m, I guess. And the same thing here. Okay, and now it's even more visible. That we should have here, when reading the input, immediately put everything into events, because now without any reason we have 2 times almost the same thing. Okay, but now we have IDs. So here, instead of counter, I will put ID. So this set of pairs will be y coordinate and ID. Let's also create a vector for answer, something that we will print later. So here we need yes, and after yes we must print those numbers, so I guess it will be just and of course maybe we'll have to print no at some moment. I guess here sometimes print no and exit. Just a note for the future. Okay, here I think we don't have to do anything more. Here we need answer of size. Let's see the samples of size, the number of red points. Of course, we could also write answer of n, but I don't like doing it because here it's easy to confuse n with m. Those are very similar names that are given in the input. Red size says much more to me while I look at the drawing, for example. Okay, and we also need counter for black points. Why do I need counter? Because when something is decreased to 0, I must remove it from the set. So let's create it even here, and here we can, for black points, we can write count of y is equal to maybe just added event dot k. Okay, so now in that, let's say, global array count, we decrease something to 0 to know if we want to remove something. And thanks to this, here we don't have to insert things with counter. Let's compile to see if we have some errors. Okay, here. Okay, it compiles now. What we need here. For red point, we need, as we said when we explained the algorithm, the smallest possible black point. So with C++ sets, it's done like this. A lower bound, and now some pair. From event, we take y coordinate. And we need something else, and that something else can be, I don't know, -2. So this is the thing is that the second element here, when we insert to set, is event ID. If we here write, for example, 1000, then it's a mistake because lower bound will not find things with smaller ID than 1000. So in places like this, you should stop for a minute and think what value you should use here, and if it will correctly count points with the same coordinate. Here, if found iterator is, if we didn't find any value with value event y or larger, then we should print no and return 0. Otherwise, what we do? ID of so ID black is it second, second element start ID, because we inserted it here. We must do the following: update the answer. So answer of this red point -1, because for a moment here we increased everything by 1, and in answer things are iterated here from 0 to red size -1 is equal to ID black. Also, we decrease count of ID black, so that k value from the input, and if count of ID black is equal to 0, then we should remove it. So then you erase ID. And let's run it for samples. Okay, so here you see something like you would normally get undefined behavior or likely runtime error. We have some out of bounds. Let's see if I remember how to run GDB here. It's something that I recommend, at least in Ubuntu. It should tell me in what line I have an error, and it says line 64. So here. Okay, why is, okay, so here. And why is that? Well, because ID black is from 1 to something, because like this is 1 to black size, and count is numbered from 0. So we put -1 here. Exit, quit. Okay, let's see now. 1, 1, 2. No, we get the same thing. Sample outputs printed. Possibly we could get something different, of course, because I think so. I think that here there are multiple correct answers, like printed here, like set here. Sometimes in a contest right now I would create more tests if I want to be sure about the correctness. I don't want to risk a penalty for wrong submission. But here, like, we don't care that much about wrong submissions. We can be a bit lazy, so we can submit. The complexity of everything was n log n, because we sorted, we used set. And it should be fast enough, of course. We got wrong answer on test 13, so the logic isn't very stupid, I guess, because it passed so many tests, but something is wrong. Maybe something is wrong with the same coordinates. Let's go through some questions if there are any related to a problem. I missed the first part of the stream. How did you get C++ to tell you the specific error instead of just runtime error? And sorry, okay, so this I will answer in a moment. And the tourist asks, sorry, I missed it. Why did you increase the indices by 1 in the first place? I did it only because the statement said that it's numbered from 1 to something, so I wanted to have the same thing. Because, well, it's numbered this way in the input, and if I print some debug info, I also want to have these values because I will understand it easier. but maybe I should have only increased it while printing. What should be the strategy to improve ratings? I will answer that after solving this problem. And about the how did you get C++ to tell you the specific error instead of just the runtime error? So first thing is the compilation commands that I recommend. So these are flags that I use. And the second part is that, so let's again create that error. Let's do it more slowly. Right now, some flag said to me that I get out of bounds error. So it's cool already, instead of just segmentation fault or undefined behavior. Now in Ubuntu I run gdb and name of executable file. Here I do run and I choose file for that. It's indeed like the same error. And now bt means, I think, backtrace, something like that. And thanks to this, I know exactly what happened, in what function I was, and the last line says to me that error was in line 64, what is extremely useful. Do you normally use names such as nm, etc. for your variables rather than red size, black size? Long time ago I used, I think, short names like A and M. Recently I want my code to be easier to read, and like I don't lose more than a second, maybe, I don't know, 3 seconds to write red size instead of M. And I often save a lot of time because I use correct variables. Also, I was training a lot for ACM ICPC, that is a team competition, and there it's very important to make your code easier to read for your teammates, what is actually a good practice for your real job. So I guess names like answer, event, count are much better than ABCD. Okay, so what we can do now? We can create some tests by hand. So right now I would just take a piece of paper and draw some set of points and see what happens. So this is one possibility. The other is that I can write a generator and maybe find some tests for which it doesn't work. So with generator, I would also need a second solution, something that, so a solution that, no, some brute force, maybe exponential one, and to compare answers, at least yes, no. I think what also makes sense is to write just a generator that will print values that I'm sure should give answer yes. So I can create generator that should never give no, and here write assert false. So assert that I will never print no, and then run 1,000 of tests. At the end, can you please tell us how to write generators for tests? I can write an example now. Okay, let's do it. For when I create problems for competitions, I use it a bit more smartly, maybe, because I use testlib, but right now it isn't necessary. So I will do here what I would do in an actual contest. So let's use just rand. So this will be a function that returns random number between A and B. So one thing, for example, let's say the input contains just n. So then we could do it like this. And the thing is that when I write generator now, every time it will generate the same thing. How to fix it? We can of course do run times 0, and then in every second a new value will appear. The issue is that if you want to really check it on thousands of tests, for 1 second all the time you will get the same value. But what I want to do instead is to every run get a different value. And the second issue is that you can't reproduce this thing, because if you write generator, if you run it and create some test, you get, I don't know, error, assert, wrong answer, something for this test. It's gone if you didn't write it to a file. So instead, what is extremely useful is to take seed value. So actually we can write seed is equal to this and strand of seed. So this is what I really do in a contest. In a contest. Right now it prints different thing every time, and my most basic loop in Bash is this. I'm pasting it in chat. Okay, so here let's move to the statement. So first we had some n. Let's try to generate small values. It isn't a good thing that here the input isn't that simple, so I will spend some time writing this generator. It will not take 10 seconds, but let's do it anyway. So first we had red points. But first, let's say also in some, let's create some constants, not to have the same value in many places. Let m be the maximum possible coordinate. Okay, we created red points. Of course, we can print them immediately, or maybe we would have to. Sorry, maybe we would want to do it later. We can do it here. And now we want to create black points. Since I don't have a brute force, first I will try to create something that I'm sure should give answer yes. So maybe let's just say that let's print the same values again. So black points and red points will be the same. And the counter k value will be equal to 1. What is wrong? Missing int. So now my generator prints indeed various things each time. I can also put, let's say, some separator between them. And actually I want to run it, pass it to my, oh, something is wrong, because I left that -1 thing, or I removed it. So let's check again to be sure whether it works for samples. It does. And now we want to have assert false here. It looks correct. we can increase here value of n a bit. We can increase coordinates. We can do some extra checks. For example, maybe it's good to here sort that, and what we want here is that the numbers are different. So this is a first thing to check. It will not hurt me to check that, and it still works. What else? If here instead of 1 I will print a random value, the answer should still be yes. I think that assert becomes incorrect then, because values didn't have to be different. Okay, that's bad. So that check was stupid, if numbers can be big. It doesn't seem to give any errors. What we can also do is red points. Sorry. So here we actually print black points. So what we can do? We can random shuffle points at this moment to not make them in the same order. The next thing is that we can here not print the same coordinates, but make them a bit different. P second for sure can be increased a bit. And the answer should still be yes, because it only helps. First could be decreased a bit. So here let's write the 0, 2. But we don't want to allow coordinates to be negative. So here instead of... So let's just write here max of 1 and something. And run it again. And since we don't seem to find a test for which it wouldn't work, what it can mean? Maybe it fails only on some big tests, because maybe we get some out of boundary, something, some undefined behavior. Maybe it also fails on small tests, but it's undefined behavior. The other thing is that maybe when answer is no, maybe I print yes because I think that something is allowed. I don't check that in this generator. Some other idea is that maybe I correctly say yes or no, but I print values incorrectly. Maybe I put some indices wrong. Do you have questions? I don't see any. So what we can do now? We can try to write some smarter checks. For example, here, instead of this, I would actually do, at the beginning, we can remember the k values from the input, and here count each value and check if it doesn't exceed that first counter. So here let's do remember count to be equal to count, and here for int id in answer, assert id must be between 1 and the number of black points. Also decrease memo count of id. Let's here decrease id by 1 to make it from 0 to black size -1. And assert memo count of id is at least 0. Let's check now. It seems to still work. So I would say that likely right now the issue is with maybe tests with no, or maybe I don't correctly match points. Okay, so two ways now are that maybe I should write brute force to check exponential brute force to check if I print yes or no correctly. So either I can do that, or I can cheat a bit and take a look at test in Codeforces to see what was wrong. Because actually, when we aren't in a contest, we can see a test, or at least its begin. So what do you think about it? Should I write brute force and try to like test it more, or do we cheat? Okay, Vitamin, have a good night, bye. Cheat, write the brute force. Brute force is cheating. When sorting the points in the beginning, you have to look in the case when you have 2 points with the same x but different y. Well, I think I do that correctly. QWERTY says brute force. I think I do that correctly because with the same x, I check the type first, so it's important. I process every time first black, then red. Please continue doing this. Maybe I will. Show us brute, test case. Okay, I think we can count votes. I think there is an option to vote in Twitch, but I don't know how to do it. When you have two different red points with same x, you have to put first the one with bigger y. Okay, CPP lover, I think you are correct. Let's try to construct a test showing that. Okay, I don't think you are correct. Please treat so that no one learns how to test their code. Yeah, that's a good advice. Okay, I think most people said brute. So let's think about what CPP lover said. So whether we should care about order of red points with the same x coordinate. So with the same x coordinate, if we first consider higher point, then for that one we try to match it with the worst possible black point, so lowest one higher than that. And then for the next red point, we can't match it with this point. But if we want to match it with this point, apparently because we can't in any different point, then that higher point wouldn't be able to match with anything else. So the way to prove that you don't have to care about it is to think, is it possible to like break it if some order is used? It's hard for me to express out loud exactly the proof here, but this is how you should do it, how you should prove it. Care about the order of black point for same x. Well, if for same x, like for same x, it doesn't matter in what order I insert points in set, because set will contain the same pairs after I insert everything. One other thing that maybe should be done is to change set to multiset if values could repeat, but it isn't necessary because IDs are unique. Okay, so let's write brute force. Okay, here we still had that stress testing. Okay, brute force. Generally in brute force you shouldn't copy any parts of the main solution. Why is that? Because maybe you made a mistake while reading the input. So let's do it completely from the beginning. Maybe even let's read the input in a different form. Okay, here, since you should understand what I'm doing, I will use scanf because it's easier for me. Let's just name everything like it's named in the statement, so A and so on. Just from curiosity, do you hear my keyboard and my mouse? And if yes, how loud? And is it annoying? Okay, here what we want to do. Sometimes in brute forces you should iterate over masks, but here it isn't enough. We should do some recursive function. What I like to do globally. What is annoying a bit, but okay. I think we must move all the vectors here. N and M also can be moved here, why not? So now we can do everything here globally. Also, you theoretically don't have to do it because you can create lambda function here, but if you want to make it recursive, actually auto should be something more complicated. It should be exactly type of that. I'm not sure I would be able to do it. And let's create a recursive function to just consider everything. So let's say that here we get index of red point, and here black points were from 0 to so N was about red points. Black points. You can notice that I actually tried to do everything completely different from my first solution because it decreases chances of doing the same thing wrong. Okay, here if k of id black is still positive and that condition from the statement, so c of c was for black points, black is more than, let's do it with function, then a of id red, b of id red, d of id black, then minus id black, move to the next red point and revert the change. If id red is equal to the number of red points at some moment, we say yes, and let's say we exit from the program completely. If it didn't happen, we can write no. Okay, order function is missing and something is wrong with n. Also, so this warning is, I think it's allowed with flag w shadow, this one. If you use two variables with the same name, what I did here, it warns you about it. And it's an important, it helped me here because I've read n to that local variable, while here I try to use global variable. So you see the next mistake I made, that was caught by flex. Okay, and order. It should work. ID red, a typo. ID red. Okay, it works on samples. Questions? Someone said in Polish, Kamil, you still have n in main. Yeah, I noticed myself with flex. Do you have to use multisets? I don't have to if pairs are unique, and I think they are, because the second value is unique, ID. And please use English, so everybody would understand. Okay, so now in here we remove printing everything else than yes or no. In generator, we can print, let's say, okay, I will copy paste, sorry. Per first, per second, and random counter. So maybe let's just, I will copy this first code to some first version, just in case I need it later. And here, I actually do almost the same thing twice. Because now the number of points don't have to be the same. Okay, and the difference is if turn is equal to 1, we also have to print k. If you write some generator that isn't very straightforward, it's good to just see with eyes whether it makes some sense. So I run it for a few seeds and see if the format is okay. And indeed, there is n, then there is m, they could be different. And always the first coordinate is smaller than the second one. And now let's create a bit more complicated bash script for testing. So I is seed. So just this script would print numbers from 1 and so on. Generator with this seed, I use it to save input file to some file. Input to some file, and I always call it int. I would call it in, but I always name my first sample test like this, so I all the time for years use int. It's convenient for me. And now, of course, you could straightforward way would to do something like from C runs from int to out1, brute from int to out2, diff out1, out2, or break. This break like breaks from the whole loop and stops the script. Actually, it's also possible in Bash to do it easier. So diff, actually this thing runs something and gives you, let's say, as argument, I don't know, maybe temporary file that contains it. Well, not file, I think it's a stream. assertion false failed. Okay, we have some assertions that shouldn't be there, I think. Let's see, int 61. Okay, of course this assertion is stupid now because we generate various tests. And unfortunately it seems to work. Let's leave it for some time. What suggests that either it doesn't work only for big values, so maybe I have some overflow. And an awesome thing about using vectors, about not having any arrays here at all, is that I'm quite sure that it's not out of boundary error right now, unless my flags don't catch something. I'm quite sure that if something is out of boundary, it will also be catched in small tests. So I would say like 95% that something is wrong with these values that I print here. So maybe I match something wrong. And since yes or no is always okay, it suggests that maybe I just print wrong ID. I match correctly since yes, no is okay, but I print wrong. Maybe our generator is too basic. Maybe here we can change it to bigger value. Maybe it will help. Also, so far I compiled only with F9, so the one with flags, with like sanitizers. Right now I want to make it faster, so I compile with F8. So the one with O2 optimizations and without sanitizers. Can someone please share the flag code? It's above in chat. Can someone please copy? So now what we can do still, we can create tests. We can create tests by hand and try to read, analyze by hand what is printed. And we can also, what else? We can experiment with generator, but I don't think it will change anything. We can also read the statement again, because maybe I missed something. It seems, if my program seems to work with brute force on thousands of tests, so right now we have like 20,000 checked tests. Also, just to make sure, let's for a moment create some error on purpose here, just to see that our script does check anything. So yeah, I made a mistake. So after first loop it will break all the time and it will print yes, and indeed it found a test very quickly. Why is it? Oh, okay, it's even assert and not wrong answer. So let's here just change yes to yes. And yeah, it's found a test where it's yes instead of yes. So right now I'm going to read the statement again. Later, as we already spent a lot of time here, not to waste the whole stream for this, I think I will cheat and see a test to understand something better. Also, of course, maybe some of you see an issue with my code. Do you have some pre-written code for segment trees? No, I have pre-written code for FFT, for flows, and this is like 90% of what I use pre-written. Do you use count one based? things like that, like using count 1 or 0 based, should be caught with that stress testing on thousands of tests. It would be very strange not to be caught. So count is 0 based. So here we like id black is from 1 to something, and here I decrease 1. When I create it, here I is indeed from 0. And that's it, I guess. Can you share those codes? Can I share my codes for flows? Yes, I can do it after a stream. I can paste it together with my codes from the stream. Basically, when there is any problem for flows, for example, you can go through codes of top people and choose something. Maybe it's good to ask them for permission. Like, it's nice to do it, but especially because in some competitions you have to use only code written by you. So actually you would be disqualified possibly in some competitions for copying someone's implementation. And well, my advice is that it's best to follow some tutorial and write your own implementation just once. Maybe following someone else's code, because then you learn a lot. Okay, let me read the statement. Coordinates could be big, so just to check things, let's change m to 1 billion. Maybe it will help, but I doubt it. We can also try to generate n from bigger interval, and just to make things a bit smarter, max k is equal to so what I'm changing now is something not really important, just something from experience with stress testing a lot of things. It's better to generate randomly that maximum allowed value of something, and then to, when I do something many times, then now every time from 1 to this generated randomly value. It's a bit smarter, but it doesn't change much. Okay, I don't see a possible thing I didn't understand correctly, so let me read the things related to printing that answer, so what is here, and how we assign values to answer. So here is this moment. Maybe I don't assign IDs correctly first, so let's take a look at how I read the input, because it's quite retarded way to first read and then to create those events, but it looks okay. I can also submit with those extra asserts from here to see if it fails. This error is just because I recompiled the program. So let's submit it again. CCPP. What editor is this? It's Genie. Actually, I strongly recommend Genie because we actually got assert. So let's think about it in a moment. I strongly recommend Genie because you don't actually need an extra terminal with Genie, because Genie has built-in terminal here, and I can do everything here. What is also cool is that if you look at this terminal, if I change file at the top, it follows my directory. Of course, it's possible to turn off or on, but I find it very useful during team contests in ACM ICPC, where we have multiple directories, and then we don't have to remember to go to our own directory for our problem. So strongly recommend that. 15 new messages. Wow. Yeah, like 11 of those are very old, and when I open messages, only the first page is shown, and I would have to scroll a lot and like check next pages to find those 11 messages. So I have 11 messages by default right now. And 4 are apparently from the time of this stream. Okay, so something here was an assert apparently broke, and it wasn't caught by my generator with like stress testing, what is very strange. It's hard for me to imagine a scenario that isn't possible to get with small random tests. When like sometimes it's necessary to create maybe even millions of small random tests, but it's unusual. So I would believe that 20,000 here is enough. And also let's be sure that it's this, let's say this assert. If I change assert to while, so while this, it will give me time limit exceeded if it was a case. Then I will know that this value was smaller than 0. Like this is equivalent to writing nothing, but it runs forever. So yeah, so this was an issue. What is strange? Let's get back to assert. It isn't allowed by maybe I don't generate all possible tests, because for example I think my program wouldn't work for k equal to 0, but it isn't allowed here. Let's change this to smaller value to try to catch it. Okay, I think it's time to cheat. And the worst possible scenario is that it will be a huge test from which I understand nothing. Possible. Okay, so let's do it. The beginning doesn't say much. Let's see what I printed when it was wrong answer. Huh. this wrong answer message isn't much helpful because it says claimed answer is not correct. It would be useful to see a bit more of this input. What I can also do, so I can cheat even more and take someone else's code in C++. Of course, it's impossible to do in a contest, and actually if I spend so much time trying to find a mistake, I wouldn't do well in this contest, but that happens. Let's copy our brute force to some brute first CPP, just in case we need it later. So here, instead of brute force, let's use someone else's code and try to do it. It said no new line at the end of file, so apparently we print yes, no a bit different, but I think we can run diff with some flag for that. Maybe W? Does someone remember? Okay, W. Oh, because I don't print numbers. Okay, no, never mind. So his program likely prints some numbers, yeah. So let's just remove this in his program. Okay. Likely we will not find anything because it's only yes, no, but well, maybe it would catch some mistake in my brute force. Okay, so apparently I print yes, no is correct, but I print indices wrong. The possible reasons are that I do something in the wrong order first. Maybe I read the input a bit wrong, something like that. So I think right now it's like I'm so confused that I have to write a checker, my own checker for that, to find a test for which those values will not be okay. Actually, it shouldn't be hard because here we remember red points, black points. On the other hand, assert was failed in Codeforces, while it wasn't failed in any tests in my computer. So checker shouldn't help, I think. Maybe you have some ideas, guys? His output was sorted, your output wasn't sorted. Okay, let's see what I have to print. Should be the number of actors who should perform the if part. I think everything is okay here. Let's see in my submission whether, as you can see here, values don't have to be sorted, because we print some matching. So what is matched to the first value, the second value, and so on. Also, we can do one more thing. We can go to blog with announcement of this contest and try to find people who ask what is test number something. Another thing impossible to do during a contest. Some other idea is, like, while we absolve, here we print some first part of input is printed. Actually, with enough submissions you can get all the input, because in your program you can output, let's say, first 250, I think this is the limit, 56 characters from the input, then the next 256 56, and so on. So with like 10 submissions, or maybe a bit more, a bit less, we would get the whole input. But let's not do so stupid things. Again, I get an error. The Twitch machine got unplugged. Do you hear me and see me? Your assert showed that the mistake is in the case. Yes, I think so. Okay, so maybe not in IDs. Like, okay, I understand your point. So yes and no. If yes and no was set correctly, but apparently my assert here failed, then maybe there's also an option that memo count is incorrectly, I don't know, created. Like, it isn't 100% sure that I do everything here correctly, like in that check, in that assert. But let's focus on count. Can you change the name of count vector since count is in STL? It allows me to compile, so it shouldn't be an issue, but here you go. Define count cheat. So if something is in STL, you can always do it like this. Did you try CLion ID? No, I haven't. I think Genie is amazing for competitive programming, but not necessarily good for actual job because it doesn't support projects well, at least from my experience. So in work, I think I will eventually find some other ID, but I recommend for competitive programming. Okay, so this was wrong. So apparently some ID in vector answer appeared too many times. Here, when we put ID black, like when we put ID black here as answer, we also decrease count. Is it possible that count is negative? Let's check it. More general questions later, after this problem is done. Let's write. Let's assert that this can't be smaller than 0. And let's check what happens now if I submit. Of course, if anybody wonders, I didn't intend this stream to be like just me debugging one program for all the time. Just there is some mistake that is, at least for me, hard to catch. Okay, so this assert broke. Let's make sure that it was that one. So I will submit again without it. But this is exactly the process I would follow when I upsolve a problem. So I guess it is teaching something. So now I expect the wrong answer. Yeah. So here apparently count could be -1. What is very strange. Why is that? Let's here assert that count of event ID is at least 1, because I think this is guaranteed in the input. It will be better to upload this on YouTube later. It will be uploaded on YouTube later. Yeah, it's recording. It creates, by the way, a huge file on my computer. Right now it's 7 gigabytes. So if I plan to stream a lot, I will have to, I don't know, buy bigger disk. This assert failed. Why is that? Okay, -1. So so let's see if we get wrong answer or runtime error here, to see if right now it's at least 1. My logic is that if it's at least 1 here, then, and when I decrease by 1 and it gets 0, okay, it isn't at least 1 here. How is it possible? Could it be 0? I'm so confused. So if it's 0 and if input is valid, then I apparently either didn't initialize it correctly. I do it here. So let's put here assert count of e is at least 1. I think it checks if input is correct and if I read it correctly. But if I get wrong answer here, it means that count was at least 1, but here I apparently, damn again, why? Okay, that's strange. Okay, I must first put some value and then assert. Of course, I don't recommend resubmitting without checking on samples. I just thought that I'm making so simple change that I shouldn't check on sample test. Wrong answer. So this is satisfied, but later at this moment it isn't. So I get some black point for which count is already 0. Maybe, just maybe, I don't do this check correctly. Is red what it checks? It checks if k is equal to -1. I put -1 here, so red points indeed should have -1 and other points, so this is value k. So this should be, as is asserted here, it's at least 1. So maybe here I don't decrease value of a correct count. Is it possible? So ID black is taken from second element in set, so the same thing that is here. Let's do it like this. Vector of touched. So when I insert this, let's say that touched of event ID -1 is true. But here, at the moment I decrease count, I want to assert that it was already touched. So I first inserted it, and now assert touched -1. So here I also, I think, can do assert not touched. Let's check on sample. Okay. By the way, you are very much welcome to find a mistake if you think any. Why don't we have streaming quality options? 7200p is too much for me. Yeah, sorry for that. I even started with 1000, but we decreased the quality a bit. Twitch partners or something like that get an option, like viewers of those get an option to choose different quality. I just started streaming, so I don't have that option for you. Maybe it would be fixed in a few days. I don't know how it works exactly. But yeah, maybe tomorrow's stream, because I will stream tomorrow in the evening, maybe that one will be on YouTube. So assert wasn't, so assert failed. So let's see which one. Let's remove this one. I hope it loaded a new file. Yeah, it did. If you want to cheat one more time, you can look at my last 2 submissions. Is it your solution with some small fixes? Okay, thanks, Clarity. Maybe I will. We have runtime still, so maybe this one. Not necessary. So right now, at least I see something that is not how I suppose it to be. So maybe I will get a reason in a minute. Okay, still runtime. Do you have some more asserts? Or maybe just out of boundary? So before touched, I had the wrong answer. Now it's out of boundary. And I don't see any asserts in this part of code. If I remove this, do I get? I shouldn't each time choose a file. So if now I get wrong answer, it means that this apparently went out of boundaries. Okay, so event ID isn't necessarily between 1 and this value. Maybe event ID is equal to 0. Here I have y plus 1, so it should be. Okay, let's assert that event ID is at least 1. It's true. So maybe event ID is too big. Event ID is up to, let's say, touched size. Or maybe, just maybe, I have undefined behavior that my flags didn't catch. And then, of course, it's harder to find a mistake. If it was, by the way, if it was team competition, I would either let someone else in my team to read my code, or I would just remove everything and write from the beginning. Okay, apparently this isn't true for some reason. And touched if of size max of red size and black size. So some ID is bigger than red size or black size. It's very strange. Let's remove printing for a moment and let's see if it fails on my random tests. It does. Okay. I do something with iterator to the end. Let's see. So again, I use GDB for that. It was for int. Okay, it's a bit harder to read, but the mistake is in line, in this line. My comparator might be wrong. Why is it wrong? Okay, I see. So comparator in C++ it can be allowed that A is smaller than B and B is smaller than A. So here, when it's black, I say return true. So I say that if first element is black, then it's smaller than the next one. What it should be is if not is red and B is red. Yeah, let's see now. Okay, that was a lot of work. So a mistake like this did happen to me in the past already. It's unlucky that my random small tests didn't catch it earlier, but yeah, it's undefined behavior, and it isn't exactly out of boundary or other error like that. Yay! That flags would indeed catch, because for example they would check this value must be smaller than this, something like this. Like, flags don't have to check everything that could be checked. So here the mistake was that I think I did already a few times in my life. Comparator wasn't written correct. So I guess that Kuberty found the same thing, like it was possible to find, so thank you for help. And of course it was a bit frustrating. And if you solve a problem like during a competition or you are absolving, I guess you should not think about it as something that is terrible, and you should for sure, I don't know, you should quit, whatever. Maybe you shouldn't even cheat. It's just something, some task for you, some puzzle for you that it's hard to notice. Okay, so like if you see two images and you have to find 10 differences, and you found 9 differences and you have to find the 10th one, it isn't good if you're getting frustrated or something like that. So, like, of course, I'm not happy that I spent so much time debugging, but it's life, and eventually I found a mistake. Sometimes it happens after many hours, especially in geometry problems. This year in Google Code Jam, I think my 20th or something like that, maybe 15th attempt passed in geometry. So you must keep trying. Okay, so now it's for sure time to answer some longer questions that you asked in the process. What should so the intelligent dragon asked, what should be the strategy to improve ratings on Codeforces, perform better in competitive programming, solve live virtual contests on Codeforces, or solve the unsolved after the contest, or practice problems by category on Codeforces like binary search, graphs, and so on. So I think intelligent dragon already went to sleep, or maybe not. But you should solve problems slightly out of your comfort zone, so slightly above your level. For example, for me right now, it won't be a progress for me to solve problems div1c, so problems like this one. Of course, here I did a mistake in implementation, but usually I come up with a solution in a few minutes. So here I think I would, if not talking, then after reading a statement, for sure I would see a solution within, like, not for sure, but within 2 minutes. Like, so for me to practice, I should solve problems like E, like most of the time. Of course, D, R, and C are also sometimes hard. So for sure, not solve too easy problems, but of course you can mix them. It's important not to get too frustrated. You must make it fun for yourself. If you get frustrated when you can't solve a problem and you like getting rewarded, then for sure you must include some easier problems, because keeping it fun will allow you to do it longer. Otherwise, you will quit after a month. So, if you I think that participating in competitions is a lot of fun. Like I like competing against others. Of course, at the beginning it's less pleasant because you are far away, but try to find people on similar level, maybe people in your university or school, and try to compete against them. In Codeforces there is show only friends standings, something like that. So try to get to the top there. And after that, it's important to solve some problems you didn't solve during a contest. Read a tutorial if you need, or if you still have more ideas, try to solve it just after a contest without an tutorial. But this is when progress happens a lot. I would say that doing contests is like 5 times less important than absolving. So if you solve, I don't know, 3 problems during a contest, it means less than you solve 1 more harder problem after a contest. Also, like if implementation was hard, if your code turned out to be very long, just check solutions of people in the top. Just not necessarily follow their code style, because people try to implement fast. So you shouldn't use that code style all the time. I think that code style that I use here is fine. So I use often longer variable names, and I follow some guidelines. Like, except for the lack of space here, I think I use Google code style. But yeah, like try to solve harder problems. And practicing problems by category makes sense when you learn new topic. For example, if you learn flow, so you, I don't know, implement your first flow, then try to find 10, it can be easy, 10 problems for flows and solve them one by one. Also remember, tag me at Richto if you want to me to answer your question. How was your experience with Bubble Cup? Congrats on winning. I was in the team who won the Rising Stars division. So congrats for winning the Rising Stars division. Yeah, Bubble Cup was this weekend, so we won. Our team won. Me, Marek Sommer, and Karol Kaszuba, by a huge margin. We had 9 out of 10 problems, and the second team had 6 out of 10. But I think 2 teams, including one Russian himself, like without the team, beat us in Codeforces. But they had it easier because they could use whatever ID they wanted. We had Windows. I can't use Windows. I don't know how to do it. There is no GDB, Valgrind, stuff like that. It wasn't installed. When something was wrong, when I had infinite loop, like in DFS, it didn't, like, it closed my window just after a few seconds, and it didn't tell me time limit exceeded or seg fault. It just closed. So I thought that I have returned 0 somewhere where I shouldn't, and I just don't print anything. Also, on a trial round, so a day before a contest, assert, if some assert failed in your code, you had to close all ID because everything was frozen. So you couldn't use asserts during like trial round. But yeah, like organizers were cool, and like they fixed that. So, and I don't blame them. I don't blame Microsoft for using Windows in their competition. Problems were quite cool. I quite agree with Umnik's opinion on Codeforces. You can read that in Codeforces topic about the Bubble Cup. We, I think, knew how to solve the hardest problem. Like, there's one tricky thing, like there are some words, like topic, what you should use there. I will not spoil it here, but I said to my teammate, I think we should use this, but we don't have enough time, so let's try something greedy. So with more time, or with more luck with previous problems, we would get 10. But we didn't, like, we would lose against a strong team, that's for sure. Like very strong team. But yeah, we won. Then we went from Serbia to Bosnia-Herzegovina by car to do some traveling, so it was cool. Do you think it would be possible for self-taught programmer to be competitive programmer? I started learning 1 year ago. Already took a lot of classes, but I also took web development classes. Would it be reasonable to try competitive programming for getting into C++ or Java-related jobs? Competitive programming is useful if you want to pass some interview. That's for sure. I think it's stupid that this is the system, but this is how it looks like. So to get a job, it's good to know algorithms. If you want to get better at things like web development, algorithms aren't necessary. I think it's a waste of time compared to other things like making your own project and then putting in CV, I made this cool thing, and like perfectly you could say some number of people could use it. So it's, I think, like if I was an employer and if I was looking for someone to create a website, I wouldn't require the algorithmic knowledge from them. But in big companies, they always do require that. So actually, I recommend it either if you want to pass interview or if you find it fun. For me, it's a lot of fun. Like in high school, I competed in high school math competitions. I like that. I was good in that. And now for me, it's also fun to do things. I enjoy solving problems. But as I'm saying, other things are more useful. How to learn new algorithms. If you, for example, want to learn flow, Google flow tutorial and read it. Then solve a few problems. Would you like to share some tips for problem setting? I think it's better for another stream. It would take me a lot of time. Maybe I will tell a few sentences in a moment. How to get to motivate your teammates? I think it's a general question that I can't answer very well. My teammates were most of the time motivated because we were aiming for very high places. So we knew that, for example, this year finals, we knew we wanted to fight for the first place. Okay, so this is an important motivation. And for all of us, that was more important than anything else, than studying. So we could skip classes to train and went to different camps. So also, for example, this year, I wasn't in home for Easter holiday because I was in Moscow on camp. And how to motivate them? Well, just ask them maybe. There are some advantages of being high in some competitions. It's easier than you can write it on your CV, so it's good to maybe you will get a job thanks to that. And also, I don't know, there are prizes if you are a good team. It looks fun to me, but I think I need to take math and algo courses. How long would it take, do you think? Maybe 6 months. It isn't some particular length of time. You can do something in 1 month, you can do something for 10 years. I think to start competing with good, I don't know, strong persons, maybe different thing. To start competing in some local contests, like ACM ICPC regionals in non-strong regions, I think if you know maths well, then you need like a few months to get started in algorithms, and you will already know something and you will be useful for your team. And if you want to be good, then you of course need more time. I don't know, 2 years and you can get quite good if you know maths. If you don't know maths, then it's very hard for me to say. It will be harder for you to switch. And yeah, math background is useful. And like, it's months to get started and it's years to be good, I would say. Do you recommend any book, etc.? I've read, like, I wasn't in school where they teach programming. I was good in maths, and at some moment in high school, I thought that I want to start with algorithms, like for serious. I already knew something, but not much, and I just bought Corman, like that like thick Corman book, but I don't recommend it because it's very like there is a lot of proofs. It's hard to read, so if you don't have strong math backgrounds, I don't recommend it. And actually, I don't know what is a good source. If you're starting, I strongly recommend. Let me find it. On Codeforces, there is written by some guy from Finland, handbook programming. It's a book that at least in some version is available as PDF, and it's made by Plik, Antti, and I recommend it if you're starting. It's like it shows you what is DFS, what you should print, what are those problems about. Okay. I think the stream, like I wanted to do, of course, more than 3 problems, but let's call it for today's stream. So it's my first stream, so of course maybe you don't see it that much because I can handle stress quite good, but of course I was stressed and frustrated when I couldn't solve a problem. So right now, maybe for a few more minutes, I will be talking about problem setting. Just some random things. And the next stream will be tomorrow at like 8 AM European time. The exact time will be posted on Codeforces for sure. And maybe it will be on YouTube. I'm not sure yet. I will see. And then problems I will use will be from Polish Olympiad. So those problems have some level. Like it will. I think all of them will be harder than today's A or B. For some problems, for sure, I will have to spend some time to solve it. Okay. Thank you for nice words. Can you please tell me how can a teenager be motivated to solve problems? If you don't enjoy it, and if you don't find it fun to like think about some puzzle, then I don't recommend competitive programming that much. So then, of course, you might think about like possible benefits, like you getting a job or something like that. But me and people I know that are good in competitive programming do like it a lot, so it does matter. Okay, and I guess some random things about problem setting, but this stream isn't devoted for that. Is that, well, once I guess I will create I will run a stream for problem setting. Of course, I can't show you how I prepare problems for a real contest, because then everybody would know problems. I think what I can do is create an educational round on Codeforces. I think Mike would agree to make a round unrated, because like first educational rounds were unrated in the past. Right now they are rated for Division 2, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think you literally can see me think about problems to I would share ideas to share you my thought process, and then of course show you how to create them in Polygon. I think that it's very hard for newcomers for beginners to create problems, to estimate how good a problem is and to create tests. I think I should make some tutorials for that. And yeah, like I would stream, I don't know, it would be 2 streams, like 5 hours each. I think it's enough to create a contest, and a few days later it would be indeed used in the contest. I think it would be cool. And what else I can say? Well, you must be quite good in algorithms. Maybe not necessarily like, I don't know, purple, yellow, red in Codeforces. It's okay if you can solve problems given enough time. There are some people, especially people that work, I would say, in universities and like their job is algorithms. They don't do well in Codeforces rounds because they are short, but they can solve very hard problems given enough time. So even if you are, I don't know, light green, or I don't remember colors exactly, it's okay if you can solve problems given more time. So basically, the better you are, I think the better problems you can invent. There are two ways of inventing a problem, usually. Either you start with some algorithm or observation. Maybe, for example, solving some different problem, you notice that, for example, if we want to, I don't know, consider all intervals, subintervals of interval, and for each of them, I don't know, see what number is the biggest one, then maybe it's good to not iterate over intervals, but to iterate over numbers, sorted decreasingly, so starting from the biggest number in the whole sequence. And then we know how many intervals have this number as the biggest one. Okay, so maybe you noticed something like this, solving a different problem, and you can just use this idea for a solution, trying to invent some problem related to like a sequence and biggest number in an interval. And different approach that then you really need to be able to solve problems quite well, at least given enough time, is to try to take some story, some real world problem. For example, I don't know, maybe you're crossing a street and you, I don't know, noticed like there's those white and black stripes, like zebra. And maybe you, as a child, wanted to only touch white stripes. So maybe it's a problem, it's a good idea for a problem to give like sizes of those stripes and count something. Maybe say if you can get it to the other side of a street, only touching white stripes, given that your foot has this size and you can get, I don't know, your steps are between half a meter and meter, I don't know. So this is just an idea showing how to create problems starting from a story. And I think those problems are better, more creative, but it's harder to invent them. Also, you need some experience in competitive programming to evaluate how cool this problem would be. Because, for example, for sure, just giving a problem where for every interval of a sequence you have to sum up the maximum number, this problem, I think I didn't see it in a contest. Maybe I did, I don't remember, but it's too standard. Like it's a thing that people use in other problems, it's too standard. So you must modify problem at least a bit to be able to use it, like starting from solution. And usually it's better if you start from a story, because then you invent a problem yourself, you try to solve it yourself. You are in a similar situation as a competitor, but you have two advantages. One is that you have much time. The other is that you can modify a problem. This is a very important thing, because maybe you will notice that you can't solve this problem if some numbers are equal, but then you can give permutation in the input instead of just any sequence. Like there are many people that are stronger than me in competitive programming, but thanks to that being able to modify a problem and more time to think about it, I'm able in a few hours to create a problem that strongest people in the world maybe will not solve in a few hours. So I will I don't know, find some good idea, fix try to solve it, modify it a bit, and maybe within 5 hours I will create a problem that people will not solve in a 5-hour competition. Can you stream at a bit lower resolution, or the text won't be visible after that? I want to listen what you are speaking, but I'm not able to because of slow net connection. Yeah, I addressed that before. I will just in a moment repeat as text. In the future, I will either stream or YouTube, or here there will be an option to change quality for viewers. So usually when you go to watch someone on Twitch, he streams in, I don't know, 1080p, but you can decrease quality. So we'll do something like this. Okay, so that's it for today. My throat is a bit sour. And thank you a lot for watching, for nice words. And I think I can say that for the whole time, we were #1 in programming category. We aren't right now. I think we're decreasing right now, so we are #2 by a few numbers. And I will upload it on YouTube, unless, I don't know, I encounter some issue. So thank you very much, and see you tomorrow, I hope, in the evening for stream with Polish Olympiad problems. Bye.